Lucy, come here.
Hi, welcome to Present
Hi.
and Awesome to the Summit. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hello and welcome to our conversation, which is about presence in your teaching this evening. It's Wednesday night, May 23rd, as we are doing this live. My name is Elissa Weinzimmer. I am the founder of Voice Body Connection and the host of this summit, Present and Awesome. And I am here tonight with Jen Netherby. Jen is a really incredible human who I've known, actually, out of everyone on the lineup, I've known you longest, Jen.
Really?
Yeah. So Jen and I met nearly a decade ago. It's like 8 years, I think, at this point. Because she did her yoga teacher training at Black Dog Yoga in Sherman Oaks, California, in the group right after I did my yoga teacher training. And so we were hanging out around Sherman Oaks yoga scene at the same time and got to know each other. And here we are, years later, having a conversation about presence and having really gotten to share a lot with each other over the years. So I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I'll just say a little bit more about what you do in the world, and then I'll let you take it from there. So Jen's a yoga teacher. She is the co-founder of YogaCo, which brings yoga into corporate environments, which I think is fabulous. And I think one of Jen's superpowers is her ability to make yoga really accessible to beginners and to people who are a little bit intimidated about taking their first yoga class, which I can say is not my superpower in the yoga world. So I really appreciate that about you. Yeah. So, all right. So let's dive in, Jen. So why don't you pick up where I just left off? And what would you say about like your background? I mean, there's actually so much stuff that came before yoga for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to become a yogi and ultimately a yoga teacher?
Yeah. I've actually been practicing yoga for quite a while. And even before I started, it felt like I was supposed to practice yoga. Like in college, I always felt like, I'm supposed to go to yoga, but I never had the, I was too afraid. So I never went. So I started practicing a couple of years after college, and I practiced a long time while I was still I was a journalist before. And I was very much like a writer personality, in a sense of like, I was very comfortable behind a computer, but not in front of people so much. At the time though, I was practicing yoga, and I was toward the end of my career in journalism. I was writing for a lot of entertainment publications, like the ones, would be like Variety. I did some other publications too. I wrote for more, and I was just really at a point where I wasn't passionate about writing anymore or about journalism anymore. I was a little bit jaded about it all, and I didn't feel like I was doing something that felt true to me. And I was also like terrified because I didn't know what else I could do. And just knowing that I was waking up every morning and I felt like I was stuffing like whatever fear came up into my stomach, and it was like every morning stuffing this down and going out and doing this work that just for me didn't connect anymore. It didn't feel like I was making a difference. And for me, like making a difference was really important in a positive way. So I didn't know what to do. So I quit my job and moved to Paris.
As one does.
As one does.
Love it.
It was a toss up between Austin, Texas and Paris. And I just, at the last minute, I was like, I'm just gonna move to Paris. So I saved up, and I thought I was gonna, like do some travel freelance writing. And I got there and I was so lonely. Like I was thinking that when I got there, everything would change. And I remember walking this one day along the sun and just thinking like, oh my gosh, all those books are so right. I'm like the same person here. and nothing's hard, but I brought my yoga mat, and I brought my laptop with me, and my laptop pretty much stayed closed the whole time. And my yoga mat, I just started turning to it every day. And I'd never really practiced on my own before. And I don't ever remember what I was doing, probably the most basic sun salutations. And it really, I think I had this feeling obviously before in yoga, but there it was like, okay, this is home. And it really just, it was transformative at that point in my life. It was yoga became so crucial to me, and to me being able to stay there, to, start to make friends, to really like allow this feeling of shatteredness to come up. It was like there was a lot of fear of me giving up this identity as a writer, because I'd wanted to be it for so long. And I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't happy doing that. And so there was first acknowledging that, and then there was just letting go of this identity of being a writer and being a reporter. I mean, there were great things about being a reporter, especially in entertainment. I mean, we got to go to red carpet events. It was so much fun in a lot of ways. So that was what that all allowed me. Being in Paris and my practice there was just this allowing to just be me and not feel special in any way. Just feel like, okay, I don't know the next direction, and that's it. There's just, I don't know, but I can't keep going back to what I was doing before, because it doesn't feel good. So I came back to the States, and I was still doing my practice, and I even had all the people I'd written for before. They wanted me to write, so I was doing that for a little while. And when I came back to LA, which was a couple years later, I just started practicing at Black Dog Yoga, and it was like there were a few teachers there, some that are still there, that just, they were like these guides to me of how to grow, not older, but how to grow as a woman. And I don't think there are a lot of, I think that we're finding more and more, but I think as a woman, it's hard to think of growing older. There aren't a lot of role models of what that can look like in a way that isn't what our parents did. Because my life is very different from my parents. And
mine too.
There was something in that, in the way they had this maturity, but that wasn't in that sense of being old and not open to new things. It was so different. And I was so inspired by them, and I was so inspired by my practice. It was just my sanity every day. And there was just this one point where they were doing a teacher training, and I was like, I think I'm supposed to do it. Wow. So that's my long story. And the funny thing is that I lived in Portland briefly before coming back to LA, and I was volunteering for street yoga, which they do teach yoga to homeless people.
Wow.
And so I had done their teacher training, which was just a very brief introduction, and I was so terrified of speaking before other people. I spoke before 3 other people in my group, and I had to teach them cat-cow. And I was so terrified that after I drove home, I was crying because I had been so afraid. And I was like, I just want to be in front of my computer. I don't ever want to be in front of people talking.
Thank goodness you continued to face that fear, because a lot of people benefit from the fact that you talk in front of them now.
It's such like you just, things that you don't think are possible, you just don't know sometimes what's possible.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
So we're both teachers.
Yes.
Actually, over the years, we've both been each other's teacher. Like, we've both taught each other. And so, well, I guess before we go even more deeply into the teaching, because I want to hear about it, let's actually do the question that I've been asking everyone on the summit this week, which is, what is your definition of presence? What does presence mean to you?
Yeah. Presence, to me, I think of it in a couple different ways. So when I think of it for myself, I think I connect so easily to the breath. And there's this this discussion of the breath in Jessica Char's book, The Heart of Yoga. And it's the idea that when your breath is outside your body, you're not really present. And when your breath is inside your body, you know, when you feel that fullness of your breath, you're more here. And so that's how I start to feel it in certain ways. I think of it in day to day as I have more availability for those around me and for myself. Like presence is really being able to see what's going on and to connect with what's going on. And so whether that's like I have more availability to see like what my dogs are doing, why they're freaking out, and not freak out with them, or to notice what my students are doing in class and really see, you know, what's happening and what's needed or what's not needed.
Gorgeous. That's a gorgeous definition. Okay. And you're bridging us already over into teaching. So how do you bring presence into your teaching? You obviously have left us at a point in your teaching journey where you were terrified. So how did you get from that place of being terrified to lead people in cat cow for, I assume, less than a minute to
Yes.
an hour and a half long class? Talk to us about the journey and how presence has helped you get from one end to the other.
Well, okay, the first part of my journey teaching, and if those people that knew me from the beginning as a teacher will corroborate this 100%. I was kind of like a deer in headlights. And my way to get through it was to not be present. It was to just like be that deer in headlights and push myself through it. And to just like, the fear was there, and it was so much fear that I couldn't be present. It was like I was on I would prepare my classes before, and I would just go right through the script. And you know, sometimes I was very quiet in my I had that was a very big challenge for me, was talking loud enough so that people in the back of the room could hear. And when we were working together, I talked to you about how that idea of people in the back of the room being able to hear was also terrifying.
Right.
As much as I wanted people to be able to hear me, I was like, wait, do I?
It would be kind of nice if like just the front row, and then the front, and then the second row can follow the front row, and the back row can follow the second row. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So, you know, at first it was that deer in headlights and just like automating through it and like that and to have presence would have been terrifying. So, but I mean, you know, so I connected more in my privates at first. I was much more present in my privates, and I really enjoyed them. And I loved the excitement of classes, but I was also terrified. I had a lot of anxiety because I was either way preparing my classes and I could not go off script, or like I wouldn't know what to do. I couldn't talk. I sounded, you know, I went into that yoga teacher voice.
Oh my God, I love yoga teacher. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Step back into downward facing dog.
Yes, I had yoga teacher voice at times. I don't think it was like always the same, because I was like, my mind was just wherever it was, you know?
Yeah.
And I was, you know, in a way, I was like trying to be like my teachers, and or I wouldn't prepare at all, because if I didn't prepare, I would be like me. But then I would be like lost at points of like, oh, what am I doing next? What have we done? You know, what makes sense? And so I also wasn't present. So, you know, I was, when I started working with you, I was struggling with how do I make my classes, in that I'm bringing, you know, whatever I've learned in my words to my students in a way that, you know, like I'm translating for that, like sharing my experience of the practice in a way that makes sense for them. And that's, I think, what some of the tools that actually I learned from you helped me a lot, because the idea of presence, of really preparing beforehand, of you know, doing like whatever preparatory work that is, whether it's looking up information on anatomy or, you know, taking classes, whatever it is, doing that work, but then leaving space to kind of digest it. And, and what does that mean in my body? And what does that mean, like, if I move like this? And like, taking whatever I'd learned and like moving it in a different way. And then what does it mean if I do this pose, or exploring it in a way that really, so I really understood it in a deeper way in my body. And my mind, you know, so that I could express it and explain it in my own words, even, you know, that we're carrying on a tradition, and I don't want to make anything up, right? But I want to be able to translate it in my words to my students to keep it relevant and explain it in a way that is that feels authentic and isn't just me repeating somebody else's words and not really knowing what they mean in my body or in practice.
Yeah.
So there's that step. And then the other step that I really have used is that idea of, for each class, I showed you this before, I'll show it now. So for each of my classes, I go through each week, and I start at the beginning of the week with like whatever idea I'm playing with. And that's going to be the idea in every class. But then I go through for each one, and I have the list.
Hold it a little closer, just so we can see the columns. Okay, love it, love it.
So at the top, I just put like my audience. And even though the class, like each week, it's like the same audience for my basic beginners. If I'm doing like this week, we're doing heart openers and deepening the breath. And a lot of my students are regular, so I know some of their challenges. And so then I can bring that in and make it more specific to them. And I can kind of look at that each week, like that audience, like how it's going to apply to them. And then like, what is my purpose? And that it's so much easier to have that clarity of like, oh, this is my purpose. And then what, like my message is basically like the anatomy point or whatever I'm bringing in. So it's super clear. And it's been nice because even as I'm preparing, it's like I can keep coming back. Like if I get lost, like, wait, what's my purpose? And so it's all really cohesive. And it's also mine. And it's also like, once I get into the class, I mean, I've already done this work in my body. I've already like prepared the classes for the week. And so I can like adjust as I need to. I know it in my bones, but I can also like be present with my students and see what's going on. And, you know, some days I get to class and I may want to do like this great energizing, deepening the breath, heart opening class. And if people are like exhausted and they're just like overstressed, it's like, I'm not going to do that because it's going to overstimulate them, and I can adjust. And so it's given me that freedom.
It's gorgeous. You know, you're making me think about, so just to situate a little bit about what you were saying so that people can follow along and use it as a takeaway. So you're talking about the system of audience, purpose, message.
Yeah.
Is something that actually I learned as I think I probably first came across it when I was in graduate school at the University of Alberta.
Okay.
And my mentor, I was starting to teach public speaking classes, and this was like the on a silver platter public speaking 101, start with audience, purpose, message. And I was like, oh, okay, I think that makes sense to me. Audience is who am I talking to? Purpose is what do I want? And message is how am I going to get what I want? Like, what is the thread connecting us? And in my years of research around the concept of presence and all this stuff that I've now put together in this How to Have Presence class, which of course you've taken. And by the way, for those people paying attention on the summit, disclaimer, everyone who's on the summit has taken the class, because otherwise we wouldn't have the point of being able to, you know, like share about the vocabulary. But so something that I found is that there's often systems of threes, which I think is also something that we see a lot in yoga.
Yeah.
Systems of threes in the sense that like there's almost three things contained within one. So like if we talk about being present, if we talk about being present, I should say, presence is the process of, am I here? Are you also here? Am I letting you be here? And is there some sort of connection between us? Like those three things need to be happening all at the same time in order for there to be like true presence, right? And when you're just doing ways that you were in the past with your teaching, you were just like, so like, I'm just going to hide from everyone.
Yes.
Or like, I'll just come into the room and like, do it, you know, focus on them and forget I'm here. So
the craziest part of it is that for me it's very grounding, that system, but it's also like it creates this intimacy between me and my students, and it takes the fear out of being present, like away. It takes the fear out of speaking in public away, because I'm okay. I'm really great talking one-on-one with people, like no problem. Like at parties, no problem, like going up and talking to people. It was when I was preparing, and I think, if I'm not present in a way, like all the pressure's on me. Almost like I'm performing, and
Yeah.
like I'm having to do like some perfect performance. And and presence is really being able to connect with others. And so it takes like the spotlight off of me,
Yeah.
and it makes it more about this relationship. And like, how can I, help these people just feel like something more connected to themselves, is really what it's about. And me being able to be heard at the back of the room isn't for me, but it's so that people at the back of the room can, find that whatever it is in their body and feel that experience.
Which brings us to something that, as we were prepping for this call and you and I were chatting, we talked about this idea of like pedagogically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Said that since grad school, but in terms of the study of teaching, there are kind of these two schools of like teacher-focused learning versus student-focused learning, right? Is at least the language around it often, which is like, is it the type of learning where the teacher comes in and has to have all the answers and they have to be right and the students have to conform and there's testing, et cetera, et cetera? A lot of us are raised with this, brain. Versus, is there the type of teaching where it's focused on the experience of the student and the teacher? And I'll turn this into a question by asking you this part. If we're more focused on the student, or at least leaving space for the student's experience in a classroom of whatever kind, whether it's yoga or whatever, then what does the teacher's role become?
Well, I see my role as sharing. And
Gorgeous.
I this was a big challenge for me, because I have a lot of students that are older than me, or I have students that are, moms, and I'm not a mother. And so I felt like this challenge, like, I don't want to go in there and act like I know more. I don't have their experiences, and I don't necessarily know more. Maybe I can show them something about where to move their arm, but and there's also a lot of debate in anatomy these days. There's so much more we're learning, and in and yoga, a lot of the teaching is changing. Instead of being this, put your arm right here, line it up right like this, keep everything, like this very
Iyengar.
yeah, like of like this, there's only one way. There's only one way for everybody. So like much more of an opening up, and it's this awareness that alignment is so much more about energetics and breath than just like where you line up your joints. And it's so much more. There's so much individuality. Our hips are all shaped differently, so we all have different hip openers, and what works for us is so different. And so I see it much more as guiding people, sharing them what I know, sharing what I've experienced, but guiding them to their own experience. And so that they can start to feel in their body, instead of lining up their joints, are they supported? Can they be supported there in that pose? That's the most important thing. Can they breathe when they're supported? And in that, it comes back to what we're doing in this practice, which is guiding people to their own wisdom. It's not me giving them answers. I sometimes don't even have answers for my own life, until I do my practice. It's them like starting to trust, like there's some wisdom within, and that when they do a practice, when they do their, meditation or yoga, whatever practice it is, that brings them to that place of having more clarity and being able to hear that wise inner voice, that they can start to trust it. That that wise inner voice, it's, I think sometimes it's like we always have it, right? We do always have it, but we don't always know how to trust it. I think when I was struggling to leave journalism, that was coming up. That's what I was trying to stuff down. That like, I can't be doing this. This isn't right for me. I was stuffing it down, and it was not making it better. Because it can sometimes that inner voice, if it's guiding us in a place that's, you know, more true to what we should be doing, or what we feel is right, you know, whatever it is, in a relationship, in our job, whatever, it can be scary because you know, it's often listening to this deep inner voice that says to do things a different way, and that's scary. But yeah, I think I totally like took us on some different route, but yeah, I think that I always feel like I'm sharing, and I'm helping my students, I hope, to find their own, you know, that own wisdom within.
I love the whole tangent that you just went on, and I just want to share that. I mean, it was a tangent, but it wasn't actually a tangent in my experience. Hearing you define being present and like student focused learning as a sharing allowed, I just want to be like really vulnerable and transparent.
Yeah.
And suddenly it shifted something in me. Even in this interview, I realized that like, because I'm holding space as the interviewer right now, I was a little bit in interview mode. I was a little bit like, I have to nod and say yes and appear as if I know everything that you're saying right now. Well, I thought of that too, of course, right? And I just had the moment when you said it's a sharing where I realized like I, in this moment, can yield to like literally just showing up with another person and not needing to know everything, because what you're saying ignites something in me, and then we can go back and forth. And I just had like this deeper experience of what being present is, and how like true teaching, in my personal opinion, is like you say, it's a sharing, and it can only come out of this state of energy where there's deep space and respect for everyone showing up in the moment.
Yeah. I think that's true. I find where I'm challenged by it is when my students are struggling, and remember that I have to let them have their struggles too.
Of course, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's because then it's easy to reach across. I mean, I think about human dynamics in the sense of like the push-pull all the time, right? So easy to reach across and help someone to reach across the invisible boundary of that's your stuff, that's my stuff. One of my favorite catchphrases, as you know, is none of my business.
Yes.
None of my business. And yet sometimes I'll make something as a teacher my business because I just want to help someone along. I want to like make the process easier, but that's not actually necessarily helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have that challenge in my friendships, you know, when friends want to do something their way, and I'm like, I've been through this, I know this, and I have to catch myself and be like, I don't know, this is like their struggle. Like I can only like, you know, listen, and if they want advice, then I can, but it's a challenge to be present.
I'm like renaming this talk in my head right now, like presence and your wisdom. Like there's so much wisdom right now. I so appreciate it. It's gorgeous. Let's finish with this question, which is hopes, plans, dreams for the future. What do you see happening for yourself, for the way that you teach in your business, or it can be a larger collective dream and wish?
Yeah, maybe it'll be all three.
Okay. Great.
So, like you said, I really connect with students who I think of as, they don't consider themselves yogis in the sense that they're all in the yoga scene, but they may be really dedicated to their practice. You know, they may be like working moms, and they have like 1 hour a week dedicate to it, and they do that regularly. And but they're mostly in like whatever other world, you know, not the yoga world. And I'm doing some workshops. I'm starting some workshops with YogaCo, the company I co-founded, for that, for the workplace, and also with some different groups that have to do with that idea of self-care, and I think sometimes it can feel self-indulgent, and just how to how important it is, and how important self-care is, which is in a way like a practice of being present, right? When we take care of ourselves, we can be present, and that idea that is what actually will start to, you know, change our relationships, and also can be that starter of changing our communities, because we are more present, we can connect more, and of changing the world. Just like, that's like, maybe that's overreaching, I don't know, but I really do think that when we are like, I mean, I've seen it in my life, how I have such a vibrant community around me, and it's because I've been able to connect with so many people, and I didn't used to be able to do that, you know. And that's kind of with YogaCo. We you know, bringing yoga to the workplace in a way that it makes sense for the workplace, you know, so it's not going to be very not dogmatic at all, and, you know, we're not going to be talking about chakras, but, you know, a practice that is about relieving stress, helping people to find more focus, more of that spaciousness, that presence, so that they are aware of what they're doing, so that they, you know, are doing what feel, you know, their best work. And really we see it as a way to help companies reimagine what workplace culture can be. You know, we've been locked into this idea of that it has to be stressful, and then we have to make time for self-care or yoga, like it's another to do, and it's very hard, and we want it to be very seamless and a natural part of your workday. Like, oh, of course I got to take a break for yoga or meditation or whatever it is. Like, we want to help people reimagine, and I think there are a lot of companies that want to do that, you know.
Yeah, I would like to live in that world. I mean, that is,
yeah,
as a self-employed person, that is my life.
Yeah.
But I certainly, were I to take a job in an office at any point, I would want to be like, okay, it's 3 p.m. It's time for my yoga meeting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Really powerful, Jen, and
Oh,
just everything you've shared today, and even simply your state of presence, is such a gift. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my honor. Yeah.
Mm.
To those of you who have tuned in, whether you're watching live or afterwards, thank you so much for joining us for the Present and Awesome Summit. At least chronologically speaking, we've got 2 more interviews coming up, as well as actually the next session tomorrow afternoon is Real Talk with Elissa. So it's and I'm going to talk, I know we've been sort of teasing information about the How to Have Presence class. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about what's actually in that class. I think it's probably been, I think it's safe to say that it's like 6 or 7 years of research that have led to me putting that class together, and coming up with modules that, in my opinion, help you understand how to hack your way to presence. I know that hack sometimes gets a bad rap, but I mean it in the best way, that like, this is how your nervous system works, and if this is a challenge for you, here's how to navigate it. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And I also, I have to be honest, and this is fun to share with you too, Jen, like, putting this summit together has been its own challenge for me to show up and be present and not push, because, you know, it's a big old endeavor in the like type things into boxes on a computer kind of way. And it's just been, so I'm going to get pretty transparent about my experience with putting this together and just where I am with my own presence practice. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow. And then we talk to KJ about politics tomorrow night, and Ashley about money on Friday. So it's pretty exciting. Thank you again, Jen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening to you and to everyone. Everyone take care. See you soon.
Bye.